Clark, if I can just borrow that, I want to show off a little bit too. Hey, welcome to Horizon. It is great to see you this morning. I know it's a fun weekend, Memorial Day. We're spending time with friends and family and hanging out at cookouts. But we just wanted to take a moment to remember as we do that the reason we have the freedom to enjoy our lives the way that we do, and the reason we have the freedom to gather at a place like this and explore God together and hear songs and read scripture that helps us understand who He is and how He wants to help us with mindfulness and peace is because of so many who gave their lives to give us that freedom. So can we just take a moment to thank God for that right now? God, we do just thank you for all those who have gone before us, who bled and died to give us the freedoms that we enjoy in this country. We thank you for a place like this where we can come and explore you and get to know you better, where we don't have to worry that, someone's going to come in and arrest us for doing spiritual things in public, but that we can just relax and enjoy the time discovering who you are, what you've spoken to us, and how you love us. And so, Lord, I pray, even just this morning as we spend this time together, that you would help us to be mindful of ourselves, mindful of the moment, and mindful of you. And we'll ask that in Jesus' name. Amen. So we are continuing in our mindfulness series this morning. We're calling it the ancient art of finding your center. And it's kind of a buzzword in our culture today, and a big part of that is because of the technology that just saturates our lives with busyness. And if you think about it, we use this phrase, right, that from sun up to sundown to describe how busy we are. But actually, hundreds of years ago, that was actually true. It was sun up to sundown because then it's dark and you can't do anything anymore. But we invented the light bulb so that now we can actually start before the sun is up and go until after the sun is down. And our days are loaded with things for work and things for family and sports. And everyone you talk to says how they're so busy. And maybe it's good things, but where do we find that space that literally we biologically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually need to be calm? To hear from God, to just have rest and peace. And I don't know about you, but as an adult, sometimes I think back to what it was like as a kid, just riding your bike around the neighborhood, and it seems like life was so simple then. And of course, as you're going through it, childhood and middle school and high school, it feels like everything's tough. But when you look back, you realize we had it pretty good. We weren't nearly so stressed out when we were kids. And so today, with a little bit of music and a mindfulness exercise and a message from our friend Beth Guckenberger, who I imagine can be stressed out. She doesn't look like it, but she runs an international organization. Her publisher is probably always demanding the next book, and she's got a house full of family of her own. We're going to learn together how to be mindful and less stressed out.
ever heard. I wish I had a better voice to sing some better words. I wish I found some chords in an order that is new. I wish I didn't have to rhyme every time I sang. I was told when I get older all my fears would shrink, but now I'm insecure and I care what people think. Yeah, my name's Blurry Face and I care what you think. Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we're stressed out. Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we're stressed out. We're stressed out. Sometimes a certain smell will take me back to when I was young. How come I'm able to identify where it's coming from? I'd make a candle out of it if I ever found it. Try to sell it, never sell out of it. I'd probably only sell one. Be to my brother, cause we have the same nose, same clothes, homegrown, a stone's throw from the creek we used to roam. But it would remind us of when nothing really mattered. At a student loans and treehouse homes, we all would take the ladder. Blurry face and I care what you think. Yeah, my name's Blurry Face and I care what you think. Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we're stressed out. Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we used to play pretend, give each other different names. We would build a rocket ship and then we'd fly it far away. Used to dream of outer space, but now they're laughing at our face, saying, wake up, you need to make money. We used to play pretend, give each other different names. We would build a rocket ship and then we'd fly it far away. Used to dream of outer space, but now they're laughing at our face, saying, wake up, you need to make money. Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we're stressed out. Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we're stressed out. We're stressed out. Yeah, we're stressed out. Stressed out.
Oftentimes, when stressed, you can find peace in nature. As you arrive in this moment and in this place, think about your breath. Let's start by taking a deep breath in and out. Focus on your breath. Imagine yourself stepping into a lush green forest. The vibrant color of the leaves and the gentle rustling of the trees surround you, creating a sense of calm and peace. Research has shown that spending time in nature and being surrounded by the color green can significantly improve our mental health. It helps reduce stress, anxiety, and even symptoms of depression. As you walk through this forest, feel the soothing effects of nature washing over you. God says He reveals His attributes through the creation around us. As you experience the nature around you, slow your mind and body to take it in. Settle into your seat as if this was your destination today. Take another deep breath in and out. Look around and notice the details of the natural world. See the sunlight filtering through the leaves, the delicate flowers blooming, and the gentle sway of the branches in the breeze. As you continue to breathe deeply, remember the words of Jesus. Look at the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin, yet I tell you, Even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Repeat after me as you see the beauty around you. My Father in heaven will take care of me. My Father in heaven, take care of me. Look around at the beauty again and repeat. If he takes care of the grass and flowers, he will take care of me. Let this reminder bring you a sense of peace and presence, knowing that you too can find rest and beauty in the simplicity of nature. Now let's focus on our breath. As you breathe in, imagine drawing in the fresh, clean air of the forest. Hold it for a moment, and then slowly exhale, releasing any tension or worry. Continue this breathing exercise, allowing each breath to bring you deeper into a state of relaxation. Where is your body holding stress, tension, or worry? Is there tension in your neck? Is your jaw clenched, fists tight? Take in this tranquil scene of nature. Let the peace of it relax your shoulders, back, even loosen your eyebrows and jaw. Notice how the green surroundings make you feel more at ease and connected to the world around you. Even a small interaction with nature, like seeing a tree or a flower, can have a positive impact on your mood and well-being. Take one more deep breath in and out. When you're ready, gently bring your awareness back to the room, carrying with you the calm and peace of the natural world.
Good morning, everyone. I feel like that we should have a gentle entry into our next portion. That was beautiful. I just took the last hour of the morning to walk through the paths that we have here behind the church. If you haven't done that yet, I encourage you to take the opportunity to do that. It has that same effect we just experienced in that video, this deep breath, this just sense inside of each one of us that there was a designer and he designed all that is around us. If you enjoyed that video, Horizon has this one and all the ones that are included in this series on their app, just accessible for you anytime you want to. I encourage you to take a chance to check those out. Well, if I haven't met you yet, my name is Beth Kuchenberger, like Drew said, and it's my joy to be here with you all this morning and to be a part of this series, this mindfulness series. Today, specifically, we're going to talk about this idea of self-compassion. What does the practice of self-compassion look like on a daily basis? My husband now of 30 years, he and I went to college together in Indiana University, and we didn't study the same things, but it's a big school, and so at the beginning of our college career, we had a couple of classes together, and one of them was a large lecture, an anthropology class, and it was like a normal college class. There were like, I don't know, tests and group projects and papers and stuff. The last class we had before the final, at the end of this semester, our professor started the class by saying, we're going to do an exercise in today's class, and she passed out those little blue books we used to use. She said, this exercise will be 80% of your grade. So we were like, you've got to be kidding me. We didn't even have any warning, 80% of the grade. And she said, I want you to give yourself a grade for this semester and then defend why you deserve that grade. Turn that blue book in at the end of class, and that'll be 80% of your grade. I'll take into consideration what you think you earned. So we all set to work quietly, doing our thing. On our way to lunch afterwards, my now husband, then boyfriend, was like, what'd you give yourself? I'm like, what are you talking about? What did I give myself? I gave myself an A. Of course I gave myself it. What did you give yourself? And he's like, I gave myself a B-. I'm like, you gave yourself a B-? He said, I was thinking about, I did miss 2 classes and I didn't give a full effort on that group project and I could have studied more on that exam. I'm like, are you out of your mind? No, I gave myself an A. And that we've referenced that story a few times in the last 30 years as one of us is a little bit harder on themselves than the other one. And I'm wondering this morning as we get started, just how do you treat yourself? How do you treat yourself with kindness? Do you evaluate and judge yourself kindly or harshly? And no matter what your answer is, do you think that's a personality thing? Is that a family of origin kind of thing? We do all have a pretty rich inner life. Research says they estimate somewhere between 30 and 50% of our day is spent in an inner monologue. We are talking to ourselves. So how are we doing it? And if I could read the thought bubbles above your head right now, or all throughout today, what would they say? How does your conversation with yourself, how does it serve you? And what does it sound like? And where does it come from? The truth is, if you lived any amount of time, you know life is hard. And many of us have this feeling deep down inside of us that we're not doing it right, that like everyone else knows how to parent better and marriage better and work better and save better and play better and dress better. And we see other people's accomplishments and we think to ourselves, why can't I just be like them? Life isn't hard because we're doing something wrong. Life actually just is hard. And so this morning, as we talk about what it looks like in the midst of circumstances that are hard, to treat ourselves with compassion, with grace, with kindness, and to understand the source of that is God. Research will tell us that harsh, critical self-talk increases levels of anxiety, depression, and shame. And nobody wants more of that. But in contrast, kind, compassionate self-talk is linked to things like lower stress, higher resilience, and better emotional regulation. So the question is how do we get that? How do we get that second one? How do we teach our children how to be that way? How do we impact the culture within our households and our families so that we have lower stress and higher resilience and better emotional regulation? And sometimes you'll talk to people, this is just to be honest, when I was processing this with my husband, he was like, sometimes I fear that if I'm too easy on myself, then I'm like settling, or I'm like giving up or letting myself off the hook. But the research is clear that if we practice self-compassion, we're more responsible. We're more willing to take responsibility for our actions. We're willing to try again after failure. We persist through difficulties. We are resilient. So how do we get those resilient muscles? How do we practice self-compassion in a practical way? It's good science, and it's good for us. It's good for our relationships. It's good for that 30 to 50% of our conversation that's happening inside of our head. It's good for our families. It's good for our mental health. So where does that come from? Where does that voice inside of us come from? We know that our children will one day talk to themselves the way that we talk to them now. The way we talk to ourselves is a direct relationship. It's correlated to the most important people and persons in your life in the most critical stages of your development. So how is it? Where do we draw from? If that inner voice isn't naturally compassionate, if you're not naturally kind to yourself, what do you sound like to yourself when you do something like back into your garage? Asking for a friend. That happened to me recently. Or oversleep, right? Or forget to return a call, or go back on your promise for someone, or fall to temptation, or any of the other many dumb things we can do throughout the day. How do you literally talk to yourself in the middle of those kind of moments? We need compassion in them. We need compassion. This series, Mindfulness, is a blend of both good science and ancient biblical truths. We know that this is good science, and we know that this good science comes from our Bibles, from the way that God teaches us to talk to ourselves. It comes from God. And how do we think God actually sounds? Do we think that God is shaking his head at us? I can't believe you backed into that garage. I can't believe you overslept. I can't believe you. Is he shaking his finger and his head at us, or is he cheering us on? Could we ask ourselves this morning, what if God's heart towards us is softer, is more compassionate than even our own is? What if he sounds less like a disappointed authority and more like a cheering dad? The Bible, I believe, was meant to be pictured. It was written in an Eastern context. We've all been schooled in a Western context, at least I think most of you have been, which means that if I was to ask you a question like, what do you think God's like? You would answer me with our Western way of thinking. You would answer me in a way that reflects, I mean, maybe you would say he's trustworthy, or maybe you would say he's good, or maybe you would say he's sovereign. And those are really good answers, but I can't picture those in my mind. In our Eastern context, what we end up, thank you, good job. What we end up, they picture things. So if I was to ask people on the other side of the world, tell me, what do you think God's like? What does he sound like? How does he talk to you? They would say things that they could picture, like God is like living water. God is like a rock on which I stand. God is shade. They're images that you can imagine. So as I was preparing this message, I was thinking, how can I give you a picture of what I think it sounds like when God is talking to you? And so I brought a video. This is about as close as I could come up with as a picture. This video is a couple of years old in my house, and it's a video of my youngest son who ran track for King's High School over there on the north part of our city. He was in a race called a 4x400, which means 4 young men ran 1 lap around the track, and Aiden, my son, was the anchor of that 4x400 race. And I don't really care if you watch the race and how he did in it. That is not the point of this video. What I want you to pay attention to is the way that my husband sounds when he's cheering him on. It is the closest picture I could come up with to the way I think God is cheering you on in the midst of your daily activities, your relationships, your work responsibilities, all the things you have happen in your life. I think God sounds like this. And a couple of disclaimers. First of all, I'm the videographer, and I'm clearly not that good. So there'll be a point where I get more excited about the race than I do my phone, and you can laugh at that. That's fine. And then the second thing I want you to pay attention to is the way that my husband sounds when my son finally crosses the finish line. There's a sound he makes that I think is akin to the kind of sound God makes throughout the day when he's watching you. And the last thing is, the mascot over there at King's High School is the Knights. So you'll hear him yell, "Go Knights," and it's real loud. And I just, in case you are trying to figure out what he's saying, I'm just taking that mystery away. That's what he's saying. And we'll talk about it here in a minute when it's over, but let's watch this video.
Catch him in! Go in! Go in! Go Knights! 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 Go in there! Come on in here! Catch him in there! Go in there! Go in there! Go in there! Go in I think that's how God sounds. I think you fill in the blank with your name. I think he's saying, "Go Steve, go Steve, go Steve, go Steve." I mean, I think he is going crazy for you. He is cheering for you at the top of his lungs. The Bible teaches us in Hebrews chapter 12 that the life that we live, the story that we're in, the metaphor they use is a race. We've got to run the race with perseverance, understanding who it is that's cheering us on and what it is that they sound like. I don't know if that's how God sounds in your head. If you hear him cheering you on throughout your day, or if you have some image of him shaking his finger, looking at you like he's disappointed in where you are in that race or how it is you're running it, that is not the picture the Bible paints of who God is. And just a little PS before we jump back into the message. If you can just imagine, when I tell my son, God is cheering for you, and he is for you, and he is with you, and he is watching you, and he is wanting the best for you. That makes sense to my son. He's seen a picture of that here on earth, and so it clicks for him that that's how God could sound. But nobody
cheered like that for my husband. He never had anybody. He had to learn this practice of this is how God feels about me, and now from the overflow of that, this is how I can be for someone else. We can learn these practices even if this is not the way that voice started out in our heads to begin with. Even if we have a harsh inner critic instead of a cheerleader, we can learn. That is the very work of this series that we're in. What can we do to our mind to literally rewire it and change the way we see the Lord and the way we think that he sees us? And so this morning, that's my question. Just like, do you think that Jesus is cheering you on, that he's watching you throughout your day, and he's stomping on the bleachers and making sounds like Todd made when Aiden crossed the finish line, like, yeah? Does he sound that way? Does he care? Do you believe he cares more about you, the runner, than he does about how you ran? And self-compassion, it's not self-centered. It's about treating yourself with the same kind of kindness that you would offer like a struggling friend. It's about seeing ourselves the way that God sees us, loved, forgiven, valuable. We see it all throughout his book. In the book of Isaiah, he says, "You are precious in my sight. I've loved you." In Exodus, he'll say, "I loved you because I love you. You're my treasured possession." In Matthew, he'll say, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin, and yet not one of them falls to the ground without the Lord knowing it, apart from the Lord's will? But the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Don't fear. I value you so much more than I would a sparrow." These are the words of God. He's crazy about us. Do we understand that's who he is? This week I had lunch with a woman, 63 years old, whose adult daughter is just starting to engage in a spiritual conversation. They didn't have a faith background. They'd never attended church as a family. She was quick to let me know, "I don't know anything about any of this, but I'm curious about it because my daughter's curious about it, and I want to understand what it is she's getting into." And so she said, just to do some research, I've been watching that Chosen series. I thought that'd be a way for me to get caught up on what the Bible says, who Jesus is. And she's like, "I got some questions for you." Actually, she said, "I have some questions for him. And I want to know, do you think after 63 years of not paying any attention to him, that he's even listening to me? That he even cares I have questions anymore? I've spent my whole life ignoring him." And I had the privilege to look her right in the eye. And I said, "Are you kidding me? He knows every hair on your head. He knows everything about you, and he's crazy about you. He's been listening to you for a long time. He is curious about your questions, and he's cheering you on. He loves you." She needed reintroduced to the idea of God because her understanding of him was of someone who was judging her or distant from her or wanted nothing to do with her. Nothing could be farther than the truth. The God of our Bible wants everything to do with us. He's crazy about her. And she said to me at one point, "I mean, if he's really God and God is all the things he says he is, then he knows everything I've ever done. Are you sure he cares about me?" And I said, "I know he knows everything you've done, but he has a promise for us that's found in the book of Romans that says, there is therefore now no condemnation. He won't hold the things against you that you've done, because when he looks at you, he sees his son." And I don't know if you know him like that, but the point of this morning, the point of this idea of self-compassion is allow him to reintroduce himself to you, because his posture is compassionate. And sometimes even people that are in the faith struggle with the idea of self-compassion because they think like maybe it's selfishness. Like, I don't want to be selfish, so I should be hard on myself. But it's not selfishness. It's learning to love the person that God already loves. That's you. Or sometimes they think they need to be hard on themselves in order to be holy, like it's more holy to be hard on yourself. But it's not ignoring my sin. It's receiving grace that covers my sin. We're not supposed to be perfect. He knew from the very beginning exactly what we would be, and that is imperfect. He tells us in the book of Psalms, "As a father pities his children, so the Lord pities those who fear him." He knows our frame. He remembered that we are dust. He knows exactly who we are. He knows our weaknesses. He knows the stories we've been in.
He knows the struggles we have. He knows the questions we'll probably never get answered. He knows everything about us, and he's crazy about us. Or sometimes Christians think like God is harsher towards them than he really is. They got some idea from a Sunday school teacher or a movie or a friend or somehow they got this idea that God, he delights in the harshness of judgment. And that doesn't mean that God doesn't discipline us sometimes. There are consequences for our actions. There are ways in which God teaches us. But he loves those he disciplines. He's not harsh with us. He's not judgmental of us. His very nature is kindness and compassion. I have another son. Drew was referencing our family. We have 9 children, so there's plenty of material in there in that for us this morning. But I have a 25-year-old son who's an engineer, and he was telling me on the phone the other day that at a job site, he backed his pickup truck and hit another work truck. And he was just calling me and telling me about it, and he was kind of anxious about it, stressed out. Could you imagine me on the other side of the phone lecturing him? Like, next time look in your rearview mirror. Are you kidding me? That's so careless of you. Or can you imagine if I told him, like, suck it up. These things happen. You'll be just fine. I was like his mom. I was like, hey, buddy, you know what? Accidents happen. This is just a part of life. You didn't do it on purpose. It's okay. This too will pass. I mean, you can imagine the kinds of things a mom would say to her son, right? So why would I talk to other people kinder than I would talk to myself? And if Josh, my son, picked up his phone to call Jesus to say, hey, I backed my truck up into another truck on the work site, and I think now I'm in trouble, what do you think Jesus would have said? He would have said, I know. You're fallible. You're weak. Those things happen. Mistakes happen. You're in a world where things happen. I love you anyway. I'm here for you anyway. I'll be with you anyway. This is how Jesus talks to us. This is how we're to talk to ourselves. And Jesus describes himself in the Bible in Matthew chapter 11 as gentle and lowly. So I don't know if that's your picture of who Jesus is, but he's gentle. He's gentle. He was even kind to himself. We read in the book of Mark that he withdrew to rest when his body needed it. How many times do we just tell ourselves, keep going, keep going, keep going? We're not even kind to ourselves. He spoke gently to a woman that was caught in adultery. She was caught in the very act of something that she knew she shouldn't be doing. And in the middle of that act, he didn't shake his finger, shake his head, publicly shame her. He spoke gently to her, our Bible tells us. He allowed himself to feel sorrow. He let himself feel big feelings. I don't know how many of you, when you get big feelings, tell yourself, come on, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, suck it up, you're fine, get up, keep going. That's not the way Jesus would talk to you. Don't let anybody else tell you who Jesus is. Pick up that Bible and read it for yourself. You're going to find someone who's kind and compassionate. In Psalm 103, it says he's merciful and gracious. He's slow to anger. He's abounding in mercy. He will not always strive with us, nor will he keep his anger forever. He's not dealt with us according to our sin, nor will he punish us according to our iniquities. There is therefore now no condemnation. I don't know about you. I don't know if you let yourself rest or let yourself have big feelings. I don't know how you talk to yourself when you have sinned. I don't know, but I'm asking myself, I'll just say that in front of you all for some accountability. I'm telling myself I need to be compassionate and gracious and slow to anger with myself because God who loves me was first. Let's get practical though for a minute. Like it's kind of nice in theory, but let's what does it actually look like for us to do this? In this mindfulness series, we're talking about practicing these skills. I think the first skill is trying to speak to ourselves with a God-sized kindness. Studies from the University of Michigan, which this Buckeye doesn't always like to quote studies from the University of Michigan, but we'll give them some credit on this one. They found that when people talk to themselves using their own name, like in the third person, like Beth, you can do it. Beth, you're okay. Beth, this will pass. Beth, accidents happen. You talk to yourself in the third person instead of like in first person, like I'm freaking out. I can't believe I did that. I'm a terrible person, whatever I would say. It creates a mental distance and actually calms emotional reaction. And this technique It helps people face stressful situations with clarity and with less panic. In my day job, I work with orphans and vulnerable children, and we do a lot of work in the area of trauma. And if any of you are neurologists out here, I'm going to make this sound simpler than it is, but our brain has different parts. The front of our brain is called the prefrontal cortex, and that is where all the best thinking happens. That's our cause and effect, our creative thinking, our problem solving. And behind our ears, we have these little glands called amygdalas, and that's where our fight, flight, and freeze is. And that part of my brain, my amygdala and my prefrontal cortex, cannot work at the same time, and my amygdala wins every time. So that means if I get triggered by something, I'm not problem solving, I'm not creative thinking, I'm not cause and effecting, I'm just having all of these big emotions. I need to get regulated. How do I learn how to regulate myself? That's this work of mindfulness. There are lots of tricks, and we have all kinds of drama teaching at Back to Back. I'd be happy to give you all for free if you want to learn more techniques on how to help co-regulate somebody, self-regulate when somebody is deregulated. Those are all the terms we use when we have these big feelings that we either shame ourselves for or pretend we aren't having. And there's always behavior that springs out of emotion that is unexpressed. There are lots of ways that God created our brains to heal. One of them is through being listened. The full attention of an attuned listener actually heals our brain. God is always wanting to listen to us. One of them is through play. When we play with each other, when we play, we release dopamine and serotonin, and it helps our brain calm itself down and remind ourselves of the things that we can believe are true. But we have to remember together, everyone's in this story. Everyone is struggling. We're not uniquely broken. We are actually just human. And in that human experience, things can hurt. I had some surgeries in 2016. In the aftermath of those surgeries, I was in tremendous pain, and my family and I learned together that pain actually makes you kind of mean. I'm not normally a mean person, but when you're in pain, you are mean. After I recovered from those surgeries, I was at one of Aiden's track meets, and I saw an older woman a couple of rows in front of me in the bleachers being super unkind to a young child. And before I learned that lesson that pain makes you mean, I probably would have judged her and thought to myself, you don't talk to a child that way. That's ridiculous. But after I had had that experience, I was watching her be mean to that child, and I was thinking to myself, I wonder where she's hurting. Self-compassion, it allows us to move from a place where we think, what's wrong with me, to what's happened to me. And how can I talk to myself and talk to a God who loves me in a way that brings compassion, lowers my stress, builds my resilience, and creates connection with others. Sometimes this word mindfulness, it can be actually intimidating, but in this case, it just means instead of drowning in thoughts of fear and shame and judgment, we're going to just notice our thoughts with gentleness, and then we're going to try sharing those feelings that we have with God. And he wants to hear them. Exodus 33:11 is one of my favorite verses. It says that God talked to Moses face to face as one would a friend. That's how self-compassion gets practiced in my life. I just talk to God face to face in my mind as one would a friend. And what do I imagine him doing on the other side of that conversation? Cheering me on. Telling me to keep going, that he's got me, that he's slow to anger, that he's compassionate. But if that's not an experience you have ever had with God, all your responsibility is in this equation is to invite him into the conversation, to draw near to him. He'll do all the rest. He'll speak to your heart. He'll talk to your mind. He'll reintroduce himself to you. In 10 years ago, if I haven't met you yet, I lived in Mexico for 15 years. And the week I was moving from Mexico back here to my hometown of Cincinnati, if you've ever made a major move, you know those weeks are like crazy busy. And I was feeling kind of nervous about coming back to the United States. I'd lived in Mexico almost our whole adult life. And I was nervous because I felt I had 9 children at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, how in the world can I afford 9 children in the United States? It's so expensive there. And I was driving down the highway in Mexico, and I saw a billboard for this eye institute, and it said LASIK eye surgery, buy one eye, get one free. And I was like, This is what I'm talking about, Mexico. You get me. Like this, they do not do this in the United States. And I whip into the eye clinic because I had heard that LASIK surgery only takes 3 minutes. And I thought, if I never have to buy glasses again, that'd be awesome. So I go in, I'm like, hey, I heard LASIK's only like 3 minutes. Do you have time to fit me in? Like, could I get LASIK right now? And they said, yes, you can do that, but you can't drive yourself home, so you'll need to have someone come get you. So I called my husband. I don't know if you've ever done a major move. I already said that, but just imagine what that would be like to call your husband or your spouse and say, hey, I'm getting LASIK real fast. Could you run over to the eye clinic and bring someone to pick up my car, and then you bring me home? He came. They did my eye surgery. Mexico is where those lasers go while they're waiting to get approved here by the FDA. So the guy taped my eyes up, and he said, don't do anything for 24 hours. Don't take it off. Don't cry. Don't mess up your eyes for 24 hours. Then take off the bandages, and we'll see what we got. And we had quite a conversation on the way home. And we get to the house, and, normally you would be able to have memorized your own floor plan, but we'd been giving away furniture. There were boxes everywhere. He's like, you're going to get hurt. You don't even know how to find your way around the house. He put me on, he's like, I'm just going to put you in bed. And we had already given away our bedroom furniture, so there's just a mattress on the floor. So he stuck me on the mattress on the floor in our room. We had a lovely conversation. And then we had people who were coming over to say goodbye to us because, when you move from one country to another, people think they're never going to see you again. I was there 3 more times that year, but, people think they're never going to see you again. So they're coming to say goodbye. So he's bringing people up to our bedroom where I'm there with the eye patches, And this woman came to say goodbye to me that I had known since she was 4 years old, and she had just graduated from college. And she's just sitting beside the bed, and we're having a little conversation. And I think she got some courage because my eyes were covered. But she looked at me and said, I think it's probably time for me to tell you that I've been mad at you for a really long time. And I said, you have? Why? And her older sister had lived with my husband and I as a foster daughter for many years until her sister had a break from reality and then a stint in a mental institution and came out with a medical diagnosis of schizophrenia. And when that was all going down, this young woman who's 22 was 9 at the time, and I brought her to my house to tell her what was happening with her sister. But in her brain at that point, when she recorded those events, she recorded me as the villain. And then we went on to have more time together, another, 13 years. And in those years, she had some good experiences with me that sat in dissonance with this idea that I was the bad guy. And so she took advantage of the opportunity to tell me all this. And I said, hey, you know what? Now that you're 22 and college educated, let me tell you that story again in a way that your brain will lay it in a way that makes more sense. And so I told her the story of her sister again, and it all started to make more sense. And she started to cry, and then I started crying. I'm like, oh, Lord, don't blind me in the midst of this, And then she said, I said to her, what are you going to do now after you graduate? And we had found out while she was a college student that she actually was a U.S. citizen. Her mother had come up to the United States and given birth to her, and then went back down and left her in an orphanage. But we established her U.S. citizenship, and she said, I think I'm going to go visit the United States for the first time. And I said, well, I'm going on Thursday. You should come with us. So she came to Cincinnati that next week with us, and she's been here ever since. She's lived here for the last 10 years. She said every one of my Sunday night dinners, her stocking has her name on it on my fireplace. Her entire life changed because she drew near and allowed somebody to reintroduce themselves to her. She was willing to say, I've had all kinds of experiences and I want to bring them to you, and now you help me sort them out. And once she and I did that, she now functions like a daughter to me. And so my hope was this morning that if you have had any experiences, any moments where you may have been introduced or come to understand God as someone who shakes his finger or his head at you, that you draw near to him. And that you allow him to reintroduce himself to you. And really, the truth is, once that happens, everything can change. Would you pray with me? Jesus, thank you so much for this idea that you even want us to have an inner monologue that is compassionate to ourselves because you first are compassionate to us. Teach us what it looks like. We invite you to introduce yourself to us again. And we pray these things in your holy and precious name. Amen.
saw a cheap watch from a crazy man floating down canal. It doesn't use numbers or moving hands, it always just says now. You may be thinking that I was happy, but this watch is never wrong. If I have trouble, the warranty said, breathe in, breathe out, move on. And it rained, it was nothing really new. And it blew, I've seen it all before. And it poured, the earth began to strain. Concentrate, kicking through the door, tides and warm. If a hurricane doesn't leave you dead, it will make you strong. Don't try to explain it, just nod your head. Breathe in, breathe out, move on. Nothing really new, and it poured. I've seen it all before, and it poured. The earth began to strain. Concentrate, buried the ninth ward to the second floor. To my watch, the time is now. The past is dead and gone. Don't try to shake it, just nod your head. Breathe in, breathe out, move on. Don't try to explain it, just nod your head. Breathe in, breathe out, move on.
I hope you feel a little more peaceful, like a breath of fresh air as you've been sitting here this morning. And Beth, thank you for sharing with us, some of those verses that she shared from Psalm 103 is some of my favorites when it says that God is merciful and gracious and slow to anger and full of mercy. Because I think for a long time in my life, I sort of forgot that about him. I thought he was angry and just waiting to drop the other foot, just waiting for me to mess up. And it was like he needed to reintroduce himself to me. So maybe he's reintroduced himself to you this morning. Maybe that's something you want to lean into in the coming days, in the coming weeks, to introduce yourself to God and let him reintroduce himself to you as you learn how to speak compassion to yourself and listen to him speaking compassion to you. And so we hope to see you back next week for more of our mindfulness series. But I also wanted to let you know, just for the ladies, we have a special event coming up on June 12th at 6 p.m. That's a Thursday evening. Tanya Elrod is going to come and share with us. And Tanya's story is incredible because she had a successful career at P&G, a loving family, like everything was going great. And at 45 years old, she had a massive heart attack and 5 cardiac arrests. For all intent and purposes, she was dead. And she'll be with us June 12th at 6 p.m. That's a Thursday evening to share her story of resilience, her story of how faith and how God brought her through a moment she never could have imagined. So ladies, you can find more details for that, obviously on this slide, on our website. You can get more information and register for that. We'd love to have you there, and we'd love to have you back next week. Breathe in, breathe out, move on. Thanks for coming.